We are in A Course in Miracles. This is the combined volume by the Foundation for Inner Peace. Thank you for joining with me. We are starting chapter 31 today. I'm so excited. And this is from Ken Wapnick. We have long been preparing for the consummation of the journey, chapter 31, when we at last remember who we are, forgetting the ego's dualistic world of separation, loss, and death, looking one more time at the idols of specialness, we say and mean, this is madness. Our illusions softly fade into nothingness, leaving only the thought God holds of us as truth, the mind of heaven's Son in heaven is. We are almost home, wherein the radiant star of God's love has quietly abided until our eyes could open to its eternal self. We are ready for our symphony's concluding movement, the ultimate vision that passes us through the final veils of illusion to the truth of our reality. And I just want to show you again the book that I think I'm going to read the text from this book for the last chapter to do something different. I'm not going to read all of his commentary. I think it'll take way too long. But I would indeed like to read. See that the text is in dark and his commentary is in the light, the unbolded text. So the bold text is the book, and then the unbolded text is Ken Wapnick's commentary, so you can kind of see how that looks. So I am going to do that. I am not going to hold the camera up except when I'm reading the text from the book. We now come to the final movement of our symphony, appropriately entitled The Final Vision, the last movement of a great symphony. Beethoven, of course, immediately comes to mind, is often a grand culmination of the preceding music, if not always in form, certainly in content. In chapter 31, we find a confluence of the text's major themes in one glorious whole, a fitting conclusion indeed to this magnificent work. We read at the chapter's end, the journey closes, ending at the place where it began, referring to the journey that began in madness when we believed we could be separate from our source. We took this idea seriously, joined with the ego, and it was downhill from there. In chapter 30, we were ready for a new beginning, to ascend the ladder. The ego let us down from the mind to the world, and then returning to the mind to choose again. Recall on that chart, see appendix, the dot atop the split mind represents our decision-making self, and I'll show a picture of that. The ego's thought system began when we turned away from the Holy Spirit and culminated in making the world. Following the Holy Spirit's miracle, we return to the choice point we had left and make another decision. This is the predominant theme of this final movement, its closing section being choose once again, in addition to the chapter's review of our familiar themes with symphonic themes with sublime variation. We find ourselves back at the beginning, the decision maker now filled with the wisdom that allows for the ultimate and irrevocable choice to end the dream and return home where God would have us be. And let me find that picture in the appendix. Here we go. Wow. All right, I'm going to take a picture of this. This is pretty. All right, I can go back there. So, I'll have to post a picture of this. He was good with his little board. I like his pictures. All right, I'm going to take a picture of this and put it in the video. I'm going to leave this picture up and do a voiceover over it so you can kind of take this in while I'm reading. Chapter 31, The Final Vision. The Atonement Principle. The atonement principle begins this last stage of the journey. It is the Holy Spirit's response to the tiny mad idea, telling us how the separation from God was an illusion and that what is an impossibility never happened. This simple statement of a simple fact caused the ego to develop its strategy to keep us from hearing God's voice. We examine one statement that describes the insanity of the ego's belief that it could accomplish its goal. And this is 1:6. Is this a little voice so small and still it cannot rise above the senseless noise of sounds that have no meaning? God willed not his Son forget him, and the power of his will is in the voice that speaks for him. Which lesson will you learn? What outcome is inevitable, sure as God, and far beyond all doubt and question? Can it be your little learning, strange in outcome and incredible in difficulty, will withstand the simple lessons being taught to you in every moment of each day since time began and learning has been made? And that is the text, and this is Ken. The still small voice of the Holy Spirit carried with it the end of the dream, even as it seemed to begin. His presence, the memory of who we are as Christ, heralds the end of the self we have striven to uphold and sustain. And I'm going to stop there and now move over to showing you the book. Okay, so I cannot read with Ken Wapnick's book because he picks and chooses. I thought the entire text was in his book, but it's not. So I will jump around, okay? Chapter 31, The Final Vision, Section 1, The Simplicity of Salvation. How simple is salvation? All it says is what was never true is not true now and never will be. The impossible has not occurred and can have no effects, and that is all. Can this be hard to learn by anyone who wants it to be true? Only unwillingness to learn it could make an easy lesson difficult. How hard is it to see that what is false cannot be true and what is true cannot be false? You can no longer say that you perceive no differences in false and true. You have been told exactly how to tell one from the other, and just what to do if you become confused. Why then do you persist in learning not such simple things? There is a reason, but confuse it not with difficulty in the simple things salvation asks you to learn. It teaches but the very obvious. It merely goes from one apparent lesson to the next in easy steps that lead you gently from one to another, with no strain at all. This cannot be confusing, yet you are confused, for somehow you believe what is totally confused is easier to learn and understand. What you have taught yourself is such a giant learning feat, it is indeed incredible. But you accomplished it because you wanted to and did not pause in diligence to judge it hard to learn or too complex to grasp. No one who understands what you have learned, how carefully you learned it, and the pains to which you went to practice and repeat the lessons endlessly in every form you could conceive of them, could ever doubt the power of your learning skill. There is no greater power in the world. The world was made by it and even now depends on nothing else. The lessons you have taught yourself have been so overlearned and fixed They rise like heavy curtains to obscure the simple and the obvious. Say not, you cannot learn them, for your power to learn is strong enough to teach you that your will is not your own. Your thoughts do not belong to you, and even you are someone else. Who could maintain that lessons such as these are easy? Yet you have learned more than this. You have continued taking every step, however difficult, without complaint, until a world was built that suited you, and every lesson that makes up the world arises from the first accomplishment of learning. An enormity so great the Holy Spirit's voice seems small and still before its magnitude. The world began with one strange lesson powerful enough to render God forgotten, and his Son an alien to himself, in exile from the home where God himself established him. You have not taught yourself the Son of God is guilty. Say not that you cannot learn the simple things salvation teaches you. Learning is an ability you made and gave yourself. It was not made to do the will of God, but to uphold a wish that it could be opposed, and that a will apart from it was yet more real than it. And this has learning sought to demonstrate, and now you have learned what it was made to teach. Now does your ancient overlearning stand implacable before the voice of truth, and teach you that its lessons are not true, too hard to learn, too difficult to see, and too opposed to what is really true. Yet you will learn them, for their learning is the only purpose for your learning skill the Holy Spirit sees in all the world. His simple lessons in forgiveness have a power mightier than yours, because they call from God and from yourself to you. And now this is paragraph 6, which I kind of opened with. Is this a little voice so small and still it cannot rise above the senseless noise of sounds that have no meaning? God willed not his Son forget him, and the power of his will is in the voice that speaks for him. Which lesson will you learn? What outcome is inevitable, sure as God, and far beyond all doubt and question? Can it be your little learning, strange in outcome and incredible in difficulty, will withstand the simple lessons being taught to you in every moment of each day since time began and learning had been made? So I'm going to stop there because this is where I started. I will pick up on paragraph 7 tomorrow. Thank you so much for joining with me. I hope you have a beautiful day. Thank you for being on this journey. I love you, and I will see you tomorrow.